Have you ever wondered how to harness the incredible power of AI in your JavaScript projects? I'm David from CodeApps, and today we're diving into OpenAI's ChatGPT API and how to use it in JavaScript. It's simpler to use than you might think, and the possibilities are endless. Let's get started. We'll look into how to set up the API, connect to it, and integrate it into your different projects with a practical example. We'll also cover the important concepts to grasp to interact efficiently with the API. And there's one new feature that's enabled by ChatGPT's JSON output that I'm particularly excited about. More on that later. First, before we go any further, if you've looked at OpenAI's documentation, you'll see that ChatGPT has a REST API. And you may be wondering what a REST API is and how to interact with it. I've explained this in more detail elsewhere. However, in this specific case, you don't need to understand how REST works because there are clients for all the major web languages, including JavaScript. All the hard work has already been done for you. A client is basically a library that does all the REST interaction for you. So all we need to do is set that up and use it. Now, how do we do that? The first step is to sign up for an OpenAI API key. If we type OpenAI API in Google, we'll land on the appropriate page on OpenAI's website. Now let's sign up to the OpenAI API. You'll need to create an account if you don't have one yet. Now let's head to the settings to the API key section and click on create a new secret key. You'll need to save this right away to a safe place. Once you navigate away from this page, the full key won't be available again for security reasons. The proper place to save your key is in a secrets file, for example, a .m file. Give it a name like OpenAI_API_key and copy paste the value so that your .m file now looks like this: OpenAI_API key equals, and then you have the key. Now, we need to install the OpenAI client to read the key and to initialize the client with the key that we've stored in the .m file. The next step, therefore, is to install the OpenAI client library into your project. In JavaScript, you run npm install --save space OpenAI or yarn add OpenAI. This command will install the OpenAI library, giving you access to all the functionalities of the ChatGPT API directly in your JavaScript environment. Once the library is installed, we'll move on to the exciting part, coding. Let's start by importing the OpenAI library in our script. In JavaScript, we simply need to type import OpenAI from OpenAI. The next step is to load the environment file. In JavaScript, the library used to load the .m file is called .env. It will need to be installed into your project using the package manager, so type npm install --save .env, or the equivalent for your package manager. Once this is installed, the next step is to import the .env library into your code. That's as simple as doing a require open your brackets .env close the brackets .config. The contents of the .env file are now available as environment variables in our code. Now let's use that to initialize the client and to start talking to the API. Now we first need to initialize the client with the API key. All we need to do there is to type const OpenAI client equals new OpenAI, open the brackets, curly brackets, API key, process.env, square brackets, OpenAI_API_key. Now here, because we've used OpenAI_API_key, which is the default value, we could actually omit the line where we set the API key. Now that our client is set up, we can use it to interact with the API. We need to create a chat completion. In JavaScript, this looks something like this: const chat completion equals await OpenAI.chat.completions.create open the brackets, curly brackets, messages, and here we have the messages and the model. So as you can see, there are two required parameters here. The first one, the model, is easy to understand. It defines the ChatGPT model that you'll be interacting with. Here, ChatGPT 3.5. If you have a paid account, you can use GPT-4-turbo-preview, which gives you access to GPT-4 Turbo. The second is the messages field that lists the conversation as it exists until now. This is perhaps the most important thing to note, to remember. It's your responsibility as the developer to track everything that has been said. ChatGPT won't store the conversation or remember what you've previously said, unlike what happens via the ChatGPT website. As you can see, the conversation is simply an array of message objects. Each message is an object with two fields, a role that tracks who's talking, and the content, which is the message that was exchanged. A discussion is simply a sequence of these objects, the messages being exchanged back and forth, which you need to find a way to track if you want to build a coherent conversation and for it to continue. Personally, I've used a Redis database to track the conversation using a JSON encoding. While you're testing, you can save it locally. There are plenty of other ways to do so. However you store this, the API will then respond with the message provided by the LLM, which you should then add to the conversation. As you can see, it's not very complicated. You just need to remember to track the messages, the conversation. Now, there is one other feature that's particularly worth highlighting. As I mentioned earlier, ChatGPT can now produce valid JSON output. Now, stated in those terms, it doesn't seem very exciting, but when I took a closer look, I realized that this opens some doors that I'm very excited about. You can tell ChatGPT about helper functions that your code can provide. To do this, you add a tools parameter to your function call. That parameter is a list of objects that describe available functions that ChatGPT can call. Each object has a type field, which is function. Presumably, other types of tools might be added later. And a second function object that allows you to define the function that you can provide. Each function object has a name field, and it can also have a parameters field where you can specify a JSON schema that describes the function parameters. You can leave this blank if the function is to be called without parameters. The function object also has an optional description field that describes what the function does in natural language, and it allows ChatGPT to understand what your function does. The JavaScript library provides a helper function called runTools. You add this to the client call, and that does the work. That is to say, it calls any functions that the API requests, and it returns the response to ChatGPT. Now, this opens up some wonderful opportunities. For example, the documentation has two functions, one called getLocation that returns the current user's location, and another called getWeather that, when provided with a location, provides the weather in that location. That example is basic, but imagine all the doors that it opens to allow our code and ChatGPT to combine and work together. And that's inspired me to delve deeper and explore even more, and to look into tools like LangChain. Let me know what you think and what you would like to build, and I'll see you in the next video.